Hi there and welcome to the first video in this DIY garden room series. In today's video we're going to be building a concrete base which is essentially going to be the foundation for the garden room. If you're not already subscribed to the channel then please hit the subscribe button below and you can keep up to date with the project as it moves along. And in the image on screen right now you can see the garden as it sat before we started on the base. So there's quite a few plants here that need removing, such as the buddleia, the pampas grass and some other plants here on the back. So after I'd given it a little clean out, this is what we were left with, and I'd marked out on the floor where I needed to cut out for the base, and that's what I'm going to do now. So this is time lapse, there's no point you watching me do this whole process. It took me probably an hour or so. So I'm basically just taking the top layer of grass off in the shape of the actual base that's going to be left over. So this was quite hard work there with the shovel. Okay, so once I've taken off the top layer, I'm just going to go around with this tool here. This is called a rammer. It's basically for tamping the soil down, and a rake as well, just to level it all out. I tried to get it as level as I could here in order to have a good base to work off, essentially. So it was quite hard work, quite manual labour again. I'm sort of stomping down with this quite heavy tool. But once we had that done, we had a nice square area, and you can see now that I've put some timber in place. This is going to form the shuttering that the concrete's going to be poured into. So this is just 4x2 or 100mm by 47mm, and basically I've just cut it to length. So the back edge is 4 meters and the sides are around 2.7 meters, which is going to be the size of the base. So this is quite a simple process. It's just a case of putting a couple of screws into the ends of the timber. As you can see here, I'm just propping it up in order to get a nice flush joint there. It's just a case of putting a couple of 4-inch screws in to hold it together. So once I've got them couple of screws in there, I'm just going to speed it up again because you don't need to see me doing this. We're essentially just doing the same thing, 2 screws in each corner just to hold it all together. And then it's a case of checking for square. So this is really important when you're creating a base like this. The two main things really are that it's square and that it's level. So what I'm doing now is I'm measuring from corner to corner, and essentially what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get even measurements on both diagonals. Here you can see some little posts that I've created. These are just to kind of props to put outside to hold it in place. So these are basically just hammered in behind the shuttering. It's just going to hold it in place. It's going to stop it from moving when the concrete's poured in. It's going to keep it square. And we're also going to be able to fix through the back of these to hold the shutter at the right level, so that we can get a nice level top on the concrete. So basically I'm just going to keep going back and forth here and measuring corner to corner. And by doing that, the goal is obviously to get them exactly the same. So it's very unlikely that you're going to get them bang on first time. I was quite lucky here. I did get delivered really rather straight timber, so it wasn't much movement needed, but it just needed a little bit of adjustment. So you're going to see me going back and forth here a bit, just kind of tapping it with my foot, and you can see me there just pushing that corner out, and then tapping that corner back in so it's on the post again. Lost my tape measure. There it is. So yeah, again we're just going to measure across, and again from that corner. I don't think we're there yet, so we're just going to tap that corner in a little bit more. You can see that just moved there. Just give it another little pull, and we're just going to measure across here. I've got a feeling that this might be it. Yeah, so I think this was pretty bang on as well. There was maybe a few mil in it. I'll give it a little thumbs up there, so I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so once that's done, there is one other way you can kind of check for square, and that is I think it's called a 3-4-5. So basically you measure 3 foot in one direction, 4 foot in another direction. So you can see me marking this down here now on the sides. So there's a pencil mark on the back edge at 3 foot. There's one on the side at 4 foot. And then we're just going to take the tape measure and run it between the pencil marks. And basically you want to see 5 foot. And if it's 5 foot, that means the corner is perfectly square. And, you know, in this case, it was actually bang on. So I was really happy with that at this point. And now it's time to just prop everything else up and get it kind of set in this position. So this is just a case of hammering these little posts or stakes, whatever you want to call them, in behind the frame. Okay, so that's the first one in. And then we'll just kind of speed through this. Again, you don't really need to see me doing these individually, but you get the picture. I'm getting them in all the way around. I also used a string line a little bit here. You can just see me using it now because that back piece of timber did have a little belly in it. So I just used it to straighten it up. It wasn't that big of a deal, but you know, it wants to be right. So I wanted to make sure it was completely straight at that back edge. Once I was done with that, I just had a few more stakes here that I put in the front. I think I probably put a couple more in the side as well. And that's it. That's fixed in place, nice and square. So once that's done, we need to move on to level. And this is the next most important thing. Obviously, the top of the base wants to be completely flat and level because we're going to be building off this. And if the base is not level, essentially it's going to make it much more difficult to keep our walls and every other part of the building level and plumb. So it's worth just going around, taking a little bit of time here to make sure that this bit is done correctly. So what you can see I'm doing here is I'm just packing up that back corner with a wedge from the front and a wedge from the back just to keep lifting it up until I get it to the height that I want it. And my levels just sat on the timber. You can see I just lifted it up a little bit there because it needs to go up a bit more. So I did that with the packers, with the wedges, and you know, a little bit more again. It's just a case of just checking it and until you're happy that it's fully level. Once it's fully level, which I think it is now, I can grab a screw and I can basically just go straight through the back of that post into the shuttering, and that's going to hold it in place. So now we know that that edge there is level. We also know that corner is square, and we can kind of work around and get the level from this point. Again, it's another process that's going to take a little while, so I will time lapse through it because you don't want to see me leveling the whole thing in real time. But you'll get an idea now of you know, how long this should take, and you know, by all means, you know, don't just do it once and be happy with it. You know, take your time, get it right, make sure it's completely level. You'll notice here that I go around it a couple of times before I'm completely happy, and you know, the end result speaks for itself. The base that gets built from this is completely square and completely level, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just once I get it to the point that I want it, I'm fixing it in place. I'm just double checking everything, going around each corner. I'm going across the corners there like I just did, down the sides, and eventually I'm going to be at a point where I'm happy with it. And then we can move on to the next part. Okay, so once that's done, it's a case of putting a layer down for the concrete to be laid on. This is something called MOT Type 1 Hardcore. It's basically a mixture of stones at different sizes which compact together and create a really strong, solid base for the concrete to be poured onto. So this was a ton. I just borrowed it round from a ton bag that I had delivered by a local builder's merchant that was dropped in the front garden. And then I used the rammer again just to tamp it all down. Now, I will say, it's hard work. That's what I will say. It was very hard work. In hindsight, I probably should have just hired a whacker plate and done it with that, because this took you know, several hours of back and forth. I mean, I did it this one time, and then I came back and did it again to get it really compacted. It was hard work. But, you know, if you want a good workout, then you'll definitely get it from doing this. So at the minute, I'm just going around the edges and I'm just compacting it right down to the bottom of the shuttering, so it's kind of level. That means I can still get my 4-inch base. And then I'm going back through the middle and just compacting it all down and compressing it. So after this process was actually done, I probably came back to this once or twice and went over it again, because I really wanted to get it, you know, really solid before the concrete got poured. So yeah, it's not an easy job. So as you can see, I'm just continually going over it, just whacking it down. And you can actually see it now in the time lapse, you know, kind of compacting down. Okay, so when that were done, the day after, my brother came to help me. He was mixing in the front. We mixed this manually by hand, the concrete. So it was 5-to-1 mix. So 5 parts ballast, all in ballast, with 1 part cement. And we just mix that in the cement mixer, so it's pretty simple. You can see the consistency. It's not too dry, it's not too wet. And you can see the bit of wood that we're using there is we're just using that to kind of level across the top of the shuttering, just by going in like a sawing action to kind of cut across the top. Then we're also tamping it down to get all the air bubbles out of it and compress it correctly. It wasn't that big of a job. It took about 4 hours in total, just barrowing it around from the front. And then you can see here, we're just going to tamp that off again until we're happy with it, until it's completely flat. And then following that, we just went over it with the float as well, just to kind of get it as flat as possible. And that's pretty much it. It was a nice day, so it wasn't a bad job. It took about 5 hours, the base in total. All the prep took a day before that. And as you can see, this is the finished product. So yeah, not a bad day's work there. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as I said before, please subscribe below and you're going to get updated when we bring out new videos on this project, which are going to be coming, you know, quite regularly over the next month. So I'll see you in the next one.